Hello there. Few figures in the history of gender studies are as misunderstood, or as misused in modern debates, as John Money. His work is frequently cited in discussions about transgender people, often inaccurately, to claim that he invented gender. There are also claims that he created transgender identities, or that his research somehow proves gender identity is artificial or imposed. Today, we'll unpack these claims, examine the historical record, and draw an important lesson that is often ignored. Did John Money invent gender? The short answer is no. The distinction between biological sex and social or psychological gender actually predates John Money. Scholars across disciplines, psychology, anthropology, and sociology, had already explored the idea that human identity involves more than anatomy. A key figure here is Robert Stoller, a psychiatrist who helped formalize the distinction between sex, meaning biological traits, and gender, meaning identity and roles. He published influential work in the 1960s, including Sex and Gender, and studied transgender individuals, recognizing gender identity as deeply rooted. Additionally, earlier thinkers like Margaret Mead demonstrated that gender roles vary widely across cultures, which further supports the idea that gender is not reducible to biology alone. So, John Money did not invent gender. He contributed to an already developing field. Did John Money create transgender people? Again, no. Transgender people have existed across cultures and throughout history, long before modern Western science. For example, there are Hijra communities in South Asia, two-spirit identities among many indigenous North American cultures, and gender-diverse roles in ancient societies. Medical literature also documented gender variance before Money's work. What Money did was attempt to study and categorize aspects of gender identity, not create them. So, transgender identities are human realities, not inventions of a single researcher. What was John Money's actual role? John Money was a psychologist and sexologist who worked on cases involving intersex children. He proposed that gender identity might be shaped by upbringing, especially in early childhood, and introduced terminology like gender role and gender identity into clinical use. However, some of his theories, especially the idea that gender identity could be reassigned through socialization, were later seriously challenged and largely discredited. So, the most cited case linked to Money is that of David Reimer. He was born biologically male. After a medical accident, Money advised raising him as a girl. But despite being socialized as female, Reimer consistently rejected that identity. Eventually, he transitioned back to living as male. This case is often misused, but its actual lesson is the opposite of what critics claim. The crucial lesson here is that you cannot force gender identity. The Reimer case shows us something profound. Gender identity is not something you can impose on someone. Despite being raised as a girl, receiving reinforcement from authority figures, and being subjected to extreme psychological pressure, Reimer did not internalize that identity. This directly contradicts the idea that people can be made transgender, or that gender identity is purely a social construct imposed from outside. So, what does this mean for conversion therapy? The implications are clear. If someone cannot be forced into a gender identity, then attempts to force someone out of one are equally flawed. This aligns with modern scientific and medical consensus. Conversion therapy does not change identity. It is associated with psychological harm, and major medical organizations worldwide oppose it. The Reimer case stands as a tragic but powerful example of this principle. Now, let's talk about how John Money is misused today. Some critics selectively reference John Money to argue that gender identity is fake or manufactured, and that transgender people are the result of ideology or social influence, but this relies on misrepresenting his role, and ignoring earlier scholarship, as well as the outcomes of his own most famous case. In conclusion, let's summarize. John Money did not invent gender, nor did he create transgender people. The sex-gender distinction existed before him, with contributions from figures like Robert Stoller. His most famous case actually demonstrates that gender identity cannot be forced. The final takeaway is that the story often used to undermine transgender people actually reinforces a key truth. People know who they are, and that identity cannot be imposed or erased by others. So, please always conduct research, don't listen to the lies, and most importantly, stop spreading them.